chapter entitled Expressions of Love for Krishna. And this subtitle is called Pride. Expressions of ecstatic love and pride may be the result of excessive wealth, exquisite beauty, a first-class residence, or the attainment of one's ideal goal. One is also considered proud when he does not care about the neglect of others. That's an interesting point. Bilva Mangal Thakur said, "My dear Krishna, you're leaving me forcibly getting out of my clutches, but I shall be impressed by your strength only when you can go forcibly from the core of my heart. This is an instance of feeling pride and ecstatic love for Krishna." Once during the Rasa dance, when Radharani left the arena and Krishna went to seek her out, one of the dear friends of Radharani addressed Krishna thus: "My dear Krishna, you have been very much obliging in serving the former of our Sri Radharani. And now you have left all the other gopis to search for her. Please allow me to inquire how you want her to treat you." This is an instance of feeling pride on account of exquisite beauty. Sometimes Radharani felt pride within herself and said, "Although the cowherd boys prepare nice flower garlands for Krishna, when I present my garland to him, he becomes struck with wonder and immediately accepts it and puts it on his heart." Similarly, in the 10th canto, 2nd chapter, verse 33 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Brahma says, "My dear Madhusudan, persons who are pure devotees of your Lordship actually feel your ecstatic friendship. And as such, they are never vanquished by enemies. They know they are always protected by you, and so they can matter-of-factly pass over the heads of their enemies without any care. In other words, one who has taken complete shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord is always proud of being able to conquer all enemies." So it seems that this pride is quite different from the pride we experience in the material world. Here it seems like a confidence in Krishna protecting them. One weaver at Mathura addressed Krishna in this way: "My dear King of Vrindavan, I have become so proud of your causeless mercy upon me that I do not even count upon the mercy of the Lord of Vaikuntha, which is sought after by many great sages in deep meditation." In other words, although the yogis and great sages sit in meditation upon Lord Vishnu, who is residing in Vaikuntha, a devotee is so proud that he does not consider such meditation to be very valuable. This feeling of pride is due to one's having achieved the highest goal of life, Krishna. Shri Bhakti-rasa Simrita Sindhu ki jai. It seems that their pride is actually due to their, as Prabhupada says, attaining the ultimate goal, due to their elevated situation. It's not like a conscious thing where they neglect others because they're ready to show respect to Vishnu and demigod, etc., but they're so absorbed in Krishna that they forget anything else. Katyayani Vrat. A vow to observe austerities, please Katyayani Devi or Yoga Maya Devi, the spiritual energy of Krishna. The gopis of Vrindavan performed the Katyayani Vrat to have Krishna as their husband. Shri Katyayani Vrat ki. That's an example of the devotees of the Lord. From the external, it may appear that they're doing something material to get a good husband, but actually because they have no interest in approaching demigods, but simply if the demigods can help in attaining Krishna's association, then they'll do like that, use anything in Krishna's service. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 3, entitled Gajendra's Prayers of Surrender, Text 30. Right. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Evam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Brahmadayo. Sorry, I'll do that first line. Evam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Pramadayo Vivida Linga Bida Bimana Pramadayo Vivida Linga Bida Bimana Naite Yadu Pasas Ripur Nikilat Makatvat Naite Yado Pasas Ripur Nikilat Makatvat Tatakila Mara Mayo Harir Avirasit Tatra Kila Mara Mayo Harir Avirasit Shri Shuka Uvacha Evam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Brahmadayo Vividalinga Vidabhimana Naite Yado Pasasripur Nikilat Makatvat Tatra Kila Maramayo Harir Avirasit Shri Shukuvacha Evam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Brahmadayo Vividalinga Bidabhimana Naite Yado Pasashripur Nikilat Makatvat Tatra Kila Mara Mayo Hari Avarasit Shri Shakuvacha Evam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Brahmadayo Vividalinga Bidabhimana Naite Yado Pasasripur Nikalat Makatvat Tatra Kila Maramayo Harir Avarasit Chant Shuka Bacho Kavam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Pramadayo Vividalinga Bidabhimana Naite Yado Pasasripur Nikalat Makatvat Tata Kila Maravayo Hariravarasit Shri Shakuvacha Evam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Brahmadayo Vividalinga Bidabhimana Naite Yado Pasashripur Nikalat Makatvat Tata Kila Maramayo Hariravarasit Vishakuvacha Evam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Yadopasashvipurni Kalakmakatvat Tata Kila Maramayo Hariravarasi Shishakuvacha Evam Gavendram Upavani Vijesham Pramadayo Vividalinga Bidabhimana Naite Yadopasashvipurni Kalakmakatvat Tatra Kila Maramayo Hariravarasi Shishakuvacha Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, Evam, in this way, Gajendram, unto the king of the elephants, Gajendra, Upavarnita, whose description, Nirvishesham, not directed to any particular person, but to the Supreme, although he did not know who the Supreme is. Separate forms of Vimana, considering themselves separate authorities. No. All of them. Yada, no. Upasashvipur, approach. Nikaratatmakatvat, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the super soul of everyone. Tatra, yeah. Shiva, of the universe. Amaramaya, consisting of the demigods, to our own external parts of the body. Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You can take away everything. Avirasi, here, before the translation. Sri Shukadeva Goswami continued, when the king of the elephants was describing the supreme authority without mentioning any particular person, he did not invoke the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, and Shankar. Thus, none of them approached him. However, because Lord Hari is the super soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he appeared before Gajendra. Shukadeva Goswami continued, when the king of the elephants was describing the supreme authority, without mentioning any particular person, he did not invoke the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, and Shankar. Thus none of them approached him. However, because Lord Hari is the super soul of the Purushotama, personality of Godhead, he appeared before Gajendra. From the description of Gajendra, the partner was aiming at the supreme authority, although he did not know who the supreme authority is. He conjectured, there is a supreme authority who is above everything. Under the circumstances, the Lord of these expansions, such as Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Chandra, Indra, all thought and parcels, including demigods, human beings, and animals, all covered by separate forms. Although the demigods are in charge of maintaining different aspects of the universe, the gender thought that they were unable to rescue him. No one could rescue anyone from the dangers of birth, death, old age, and disease. It is only the Supreme Personality of Godhead who can rescue one from the dangers of material existence. Therefore, an intelligent person to get free from this dangerous existence approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not any demigod, as confirmed by the Gita 720. Those who are unintelligent approach to these demigods for temporary and pure benefits. Intelligence is actually, however, these demigods cannot rescue the living entity from the dangers of material existence. Like other living entities, demigods are merely external parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's transcendental body, as stated in the mantras Sa'atma Angyana Devata. Within the body is the Atma, the soul, whereas the various parts of the body, like the hands and legs, are external. Similarly, the Atma of the entire cosmic manifestation of Narayan, Lord Vishnu, and all the demigods, human beings, and other living entities are parts of the body. It may also be concluded that since a tree lives on the strength of its root, and when the root is nourished with water, all the parts of the tree are nourished. One should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the original root of everything. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very difficult to approach, he is very near to us because he lives within our hearts. As soon as the Lord understands that one is seeking his favour by full surrendering, naturally, he immediately takes action. Therefore, although the demigod does not come to the aid of the gender, the Supreme Personality of Godhead immediately appears before him because of his fervent prayers. This does not mean that the demigods are angry with the gender, for actually the Lord Vishnu is worshipped. All the other demigods are also worshipped. That means Pushke Jagat Pushtam. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead is satisfied, everyone is satisfied. Yatha Karor Maha Vishi Chanena Subyanti Tat Skanda Vijo Pashakam Kana Taharachcha Vatendriyanam Tataiva Sarva Hanam Atiteja. As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, so simply worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality. Prabhupada Prana 4:14. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead worship, all the demigods are satisfied. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivastava Gaurapada. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sri Swami continued, when the king of the elephants was describing the supreme authority without mentioning any particular person, he did not invoke demigods headed by Lord Brahma or Shiva, Indra, and Chandra. Thus, none of them equipped him. However, because Lord Hari is the super soul, Purushotama, the Personality of Godhead, he appears before the members. So it's interesting that because Lord, because in the beginning Maharaj in his previous life had accepted Vishnu as Supreme Lord, even though he committed some offense while in meditation. There was another mendicant good on the scene, and he was thinking that he's another mendicant just like me. He didn't realize he was the very elevated Augusta of me. And because of that, then Augustine was angry in a sense, not that he was puffed up and he didn't give him proper respect, but he wanted to teach him a lesson that he shouldn't neglect proper respect. And because of his pride, he thought he didn't have to get up from his meditation and offer some respect. So began, Augustine cursed him that due to this neglect proper respect, then you should keep up as an elephant which continues to be very proud. And immediately, during that marathon encounter, this, because also he already was a revolution, he was a great saintly king, he made a mistake. It's a great lesson because we make mistakes, and even if we make a significant mistake, then we can seek forgiveness. So this is what the Holy Man did immediately. He fell at the feet of Augustine and asked for forgiveness. So with that curse came a benediction that actually he became shelter of the true Lord. And you see that drop in the case. And even in mundane courts, if one is in front of the judge and they plead guilty and they've got some remorse, then that's taken into consideration for sentencing. But if someone doesn't plead guilty and they show no remorse and they're found guilty, then the sentence is generally towards the maximum. And this is our situation in the material world, that when we have recognized that we are actually under the control of material energy and we've left the certain material self, our nice spiritual basis is on Supreme Krishna and Godhead by whose illusory energy the jiva, who is part and parcel of Krishna, forgets his real identity because of the godly concept of life. The picture of Supreme Krishna and Godhead, whose rules are difficult to understand. So this what here we'll do that, yeah, difficult to understand the stream of number under the field Maya. This is the energy. So that here's a little bit of energy. It's not switched. Yeah, it's switched. Okay, my mistake. The microphone was pinned to my jacket, which I took off. So apologies. We're back in action again. Thanks, Leela, for pointing that out. Yeah, so the living entity forgets the real identity, and this is an important point here as well, because forgetting something means that you had something or you were something and you forgot about it. So the living entity, due to the power of Maya, is in some kind of state of amnesia, forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord. So this verse, amongst many other verses in the Bhagavatam, indicate and prove that the living entity is not Nityabada, eternally conditioned, and simply aspiring to connect to Krishna for the first time. But this is saying we forget our identity in relation with Krishna. And we're not just, also, it defeats Mayavadi philosophy, because we're referring to the energy of Maya as being Krishna's energy, the illusory energy, which covers the living entity. If we were all part and parcel of the Supreme, or say we were all one, then there'd be no question of anything covering over us. Because if we were the Supreme as well, then we'd be able to immediately transcend any covering. I remember before I joined the temple, I was reading various books, and there was one impersonalist book, and they were basically saying that we have just forgotten that we're all one and we're all God, and simply by remembering that, then we'll be liberated. So I lay down in my bed and I thought, okay, I've realised that I'm ready to go. Let me merge. I'll leave it all behind. I don't need any of it. but still, I opened my eyes and like, nah, still here. It wasn't very practical. No matter how much I was ready to surrender all and leave it all behind, nothing changed. So I thought, well, that philosophy doesn't work. And then when you read Bhagavad Gita, then you see that there is actually a process for becoming free from the entanglement of material existence. And this process is sadhana bhakti, where we can revive our original consciousness and start to develop a loving relationship with Krishna, Krishna's devotees. And in this way, we start to prepare ourselves for existing in the spiritual world. It's not that we can behave one way in the material world and expect that somehow just be transformed to the spiritual world. We have to behave like a devotee in this world. So there's many challenges to that. And Indradyumna Maharaj, when he was in his meditation, he faced that challenge where he made an offense against a great sage, but quickly he realized it and he asked for forgiveness, and then he was given some way forward that, okay, the curse is there. And he accepted it out of his humility. He could have found some way around it, just like Maharaj Parikshit. He could have nullified the curse, but he accepted it because he was humble. And each of those devotees got a great benediction. Maharaj Parikshit got to hear from Shukadev Goswami for 7 days and then attained the Supreme Lord. So there's see if we can find it. Amara Mayo, in the last line, Tatra Kila Mara Mayo, Harir Avarasit. So Amara Mayo, this is referring to the demigods who are the Lord's external parts of the body. So Amar means mind and Maya means external energy. So although the demigods actually, whenever they're in trouble, automatically they approach the Lord. So they have no objection if someone bypasses them and goes to the Supreme Lord. Even though they may understand that Gajendra didn't really know who he was calling out for, but they knew that he was calling out for that person who can actually give shelter. And because of his past advancement in devotional service, Krishna says a little advancement protects one from the most dangerous type of fear, or this advancement is never lost. So here we see that even in the body of an elephant, although he couldn't speak Sanskrit or whatever, his whole mood was to take shelter of the Supreme Lord, who was his object of worship previously. So he was naturally reaping the results of his past devotional service. Previously, he hadn't restricted himself to demigod worship or anything. He was simply focused on the Supreme Lord. And he had made so much advancement that when he was in this predicament, his natural recourse was to take shelter in the Supreme Lord. So this is, the Lord is within his heart and granted his desire. And Prabhupada makes this point in the purport that only Tatra Kila Maro Harir, so Hari means the Supreme Lord who can take away everything. So when we're attached, when we're afraid of everything being taken away, except for when we're enjoying them, whether we're enjoying, if we become tired of that enjoyment, then we want the miseries to be taken away. But as soon as the miseries are taken away, then we're faced with the opportunity to still continue to take shelter of Krishna, or now that I'm not suffering so much, let me try to enjoy again. And this is also related to the elephant taking the bath. It feels very refreshed after having a nice bath. And because it feels comfortable with all the dust around its body, it rolls around again, so it feels comfortable. So this is our predicament, that we feel comfortable in the material world, and that's a very dangerous position to be in. If we feel comfortable in this material world, we should think, well, there's something wrong here. I'm forgetting that at any moment, padam, padam, yadvi, padam, there's danger at every step. At any moment, anything can happen. She couldn't time I Prashashiki, which can upset our situation. So we may have a nice living situation, or we may have some stable income, or we may have nice friends, family, job, or whatever. We may have good looks, whatever good karma we may have reaped from previous life. Vidya kuliki koribitar. Vidya, we may have good knowledge. We may have sundarim, we may have some form of beauty. But any of these things can be taken away any time. And then we can be in a very difficult or different situation. So just like we may have some beauty, but that beauty, apart from being relative, it's only in relation to someone else. Sometimes you think someone's beautiful and then you see someone else and think, actually they look like a bit of a frog compared to this one. And Prabhupada says that the beautiful women of the material world are like frogs compared to the heavenly damsels, and they are like frogs compared to the Mother Yashoda and the ladies of the spiritual world. So if we think that we have something to enjoy here, or we have pride of our good looks, maybe a man is very handsome and people are interested in their good looks, it's natural that people are attracted to things of beauty or wisdom, things like that, because these are qualities which are in full in Krishna. And we may have a little percentage of those, and when that manifests, then we, in the material world, we're so desperate to enjoy that we accredit some importance. Just like if someone is extremely hungry and they haven't eaten for a good period of time, then sometimes they eat just about anything because they're so hungry, because they're desperate. So in the material world, we're so hard up that we accept so many things as being of some credible relevance in our life. Just like Prabhupada was, he had arrived and there were some reporters, and we've mentioned this many times. So one envious person was saying, Prabhupada, I see that your disciples picked you up in a Rolls Royce. And the intention there was to say, you call yourself a renunciant, but you're going about in this most expensive car. And Prabhupada says, what is this Rolls Royce? Simply tin and glass, or tin and rubber, whatever it was, he said. So Prabhupada was not at all enamored by it. He says why only a tin car? Why not a gold car? Why not a solid gold car? When the president arrives, who's the representative of the country, then he's greeted, in great style. But when the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes, you don't want to honour that person. So Prabhupada was not at all attached for himself, but because he was a representative of the Lord, and because of Prabhupada's love for Krishna, then he's thinking anyone who represents the Lord should be treated as a representative of the Lord, just as much as the ambassador of a country is treated with the respect that is given to the head of the country. If an ambassador is treated with disrespect in the country, the heads of the country take that as an offence against their nation and their system of governance. So of course this is a great lesson that if we make some mistake, we can come back from that if we're humble and we accept. And we find that, I'll think of an example. In Gopal Chapel in Chaitanya Lila. So Gopal Chapel was a puffed up Brahmin, and he was envious of Advaita Acharya. Was it Advaita Acharya or Srivasthakur? Which one of them? I'm not sure. Anyway, whichever one it was, because they were a great Vaishnava and they were getting so much recognition and attracting many devotees to their sanghas, Then this Gopal Chapal wanted to discredit either Advaita Charya or Srivas Thakur. Srivas. So what did they do? Yeah, so outside the house of Srivas Thakur, he put out items of worshipping Durga. So that would be like to discredit him as being simply a worshipper of Durga. And when Srivas Thakur came out, he simply laughed. He didn't take offence himself. And the devotees also didn't think, oh, Srivas Thakur's taken to Durga worship. They didn't take any notice, but Lord Chaitanya took notice. And in this Gopal Chapal, he started to suffer leprosy. And he was very much afflicted by this leprosy. And he was like lepers in those days, they would have to become isolated. So he approached Lord Chaitanya, but they were having a Sankirtan party, and he approached Lord Chaitanya asking for mercy. Tuma kripa kori, be merciful to me. And Lord Chaitanya basically snubbed him. He says, your suffering has only just begun. You know, for the offence you've caused, you will have thousands of births to suffer worse than this. So he was totally beside himself with grief that this was only the beginning of his suffering. So he asked for a way forward, and he said, if you go and offer your obeisances to the person you've offended, then that's your only chance. So immediately he went to Srivas Thakur, he offered his obeisances, and Srivas Thakur embraced him. He immediately forgave him. And his offences were nullified. So this is why we have to be careful. We shouldn't be taking offence upon ourselves, but we should be thinking of, have we committed some offence? So therefore we have to learn Vaishnava etiquette. And we apply it to ourselves, we don't apply it to everyone else, that you've offended me, you haven't noticed me properly, you treat me like this, or you haven't acknowledged, etc. Krishna's within the heart. Krishna acknowledges what we're doing. We can't expect the jiva to behave on the platform of Krishna. So Krishna sees, sometimes we're surrendering to some authority and we're thinking, they don't maybe recognize how much I'm doing. Well, they're not all pervasive. Vishnu's all pervasive. And they may be aware, but sometimes we don't say. I remember one occasion, I was travelling, I used to have this motorhome. We travelled in the motorhome to every town and village doing Sankirtan and all the towns and villages around the place, putting on festivals. And I would often be given some young devotees to train up on the road. It was like a travelling bhakta program. And there was one devotee who had quite a good capacity for service. He was quite organised. And there was a couple other devotees. One of them was exceedingly spaced out, and you couldn't really give them too much to do because it just, you would be disappointed if you're expecting things to happen. So you got to engage people accordingly. And this devotee, although he'd been doing so much, he was thinking, and I was giving attention to the others because others were younger devotees and they needed. So in management, there's 4 ways that you engage with people. One is directive, where you have to direct step by step, almost like micromanaging, to show them the ropes. And then if they learn it, then you can give them support. And then, what's the other one? Finally, there is delegation. So if by being directive to someone, they take it on board and they only need a little bit of support to become quite proficient at doing it, then in due course you can just delegate to them, just like if you've been trained up to worship the deities, then you're getting shown everything precisely how to do, and you cannot deviate from the script whatsoever. And when someone comes to the point where they've learned that, then they can just be delegated, okay, now you go and do this arti, you do this offering, you can do this cooking, because they're trusted that they know the whole procedure. So this devotee, he had, he'd come to the point where I was able to just to delegate to him, okay, do this, and do this. But the other devotees had to be trained more point by point. But the first devotee says to me, "Oh, you give me so much to do, and you know, it's as if you don't even know I'm there, blah, blah, blah." So I took him aside and I says, "Well, he says, I've done so many things and you didn't even recognize it." I says, "I did. You did this, you did this, you did this, and then you did this, and then you did that." And so he was thinking that I wasn't aware. I says, "Of course I'm aware, because I gave you the service to do, and I said you've done it, and I knew that you were able to achieve it." So then he was realizing that he was given the credit he was looking for was less than the credit I was giving him. The credit is giving someone with is that you trust that you can give them a few things to do, they'll go on with it, and they don't have to come back for a pat on the back. But sometimes we do need to say, because there's a need there, the person needed to be recognized. So in the beginning, we like to be recognized, you know, if we feel like nobody's recognized us, but we cannot expect our authorities to be appreciating and, or what you say, stating the recognition of every micro thing we're doing. But we know that the Supreme Lord is watching us, so we perform our service knowing that the Supreme Lord is watching. And it's interesting because if we're sincere, that will show. And in the association of devotees, Krishna, everything comes out in the wash. You know, if we're like faking devotional service and we're just putting on a show, then Krishna lets it be seen. So we should bear that in mind, because we have to remain sincere in everything we're doing and be honest. And because Indrajit Maharaj was a very sincere devotee, humble devotee, even though he'd made a mistake, he came back from it, because in his position as Gajendra, he took shelter. And he was blessed with the ability to seek the shelter of his Lord, even though there was a forgetfulness there of the name of the Lord or who that person was. But his connection with the Lord wasn't lost. This is an example of a little advancement in this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So the fear is to enter into the lower species, but not just that, but to forget the Lord and be in that whole cycle of samsara again. So he wasn't exactly in that position. So this is mentioned that in the purport, Prabhupada, it is only the Supreme Personality of Godhead who can rescue one from the dangers of material existence. Therefore, an intelligent person, to get free from this dangerous existence, approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not any demigod. So this is very important, that that we don't look for something, some temporary benefit. Intelligence here, sometimes we meet some very intelligent materialistic persons, much more materially intelligent than ourselves. They're expert at making money, they're expert at influencing important people, etc., and expert at manipulating material energy to get their way. And of course they have some karma which allows them to do that. But their intelligence is maya pratigyana, stolen by illusion, if it's not actually the simple intelligence, like Prabhupada says in the purport to the Mahamantra. This Krishna consciousness is so simple that even a child can take part in it, even a dog can take part in it. So the intelligence is simply to accept Krishna. That Krishna is the one who is the only one who can grant liberation from the dangers of birth, death, old age, and disease, janma, mrityu, jara, and vyadi. So the type of intelligence Prabhupada is talking about here in the purport is intelligence to know that what we're looking for ultimately is to become free from the entanglement of repeated birth and death. Sometimes we're suffering so much in the material world, we're just looking for instant relief. But we have to be very careful of that, because the instant relief may be entangling us in birth, death, age, old age, and disease again. Mother Ratnaranjini, she suffered a brain tumour, And she didn't want to take painkillers. She wanted to suffer whatever she was due so she wouldn't have to take birth again. And that's an extremely sincere, pure motivation that, even so many great renunciants might not even take to that. But that was her choice. She chose to do that. And she got the shelter of Krishna, those who were with her for the last 2 years of her life, seeing her going through that transformation. It wasn't captured in that little book, Simple for the Simple. That was only like a glimpse, really. And even at that, there was so much there which wasn't written in the book. And it wasn't imagination. So just like it stated that one offence against the holy name is consider the glories of the holy name to be imagination. So when one is a very advanced devotees and they're experiencing some transformations and they can't even believe it themselves, they're not boasting about it. In fact, quite the opposite, they're trying to hide it. But even in daytime, the sun is sometimes hidden by clouds, but you're aware that the sun is behind the clouds. It's not like the sun has disappeared for days and days. In Scotland, it might appear like that, but there is still a distinction between night and day. So when one is very advanced devotee, they can't even hide it. If one has got some ability to recognize a devotee's qualities. And here, even though Gajendra was in the body of an elephant, he was a great devotee still. And the demigods recognized this. They didn't attend to Gajendra, they left him. The Supreme Lord Vishnu is who he's looking for, they recognized that. And thus, the Supreme Lord came. Any questions or comments? Yes, bro.
And this one was, we know that the gender was in June March, because of that. You did remember past state of consciousness, and then he was reciting all these prayers, which were famous prayers. He wasn't just composing them there and then. But in the case of Jadbara, we know that when he was a deer, he was the only one who was in human consciousness, although he was in the body of a deer. But Gajendra was with a group of elephants, and they were like enjoying, So it seems that he wasn't on his own in terms of having some level of human consciousness.
Seems like he was what?
He wasn't alone in having some level of human consciousness, the ability to communicate and determine that he has to prepare himself for death. So I just wondered, is that in the heavenly planets, are the elephants not really like normal animals, or the animals in general not like normal animals, but they have this level of consciousness?
I was wondering about that myself. Throughout this pastime, I was wondering what's the consciousness of the different species in the heavenly planets. If it's heavenly planet, you wouldn't imagine it to be the same as the ones in the lower modes of material nature. And it seems like perhaps this was, we don't know the mind of the great sage Agastya Muni, so we don't know why he particularly, all we do know is that because of his pride, he was forced to take birth in the body of an elephant, which is considered to be quite proud, isn't it?
Yeah, he still had a lot going for him, right? He was having a good time up there. He had plenty of elephants, plenty of facility for sense gratification.
Yeah, and it was considered that because of his past life also, then naturally he became the leader, because he was a great king in a previous life.
Yeah.
Then naturally his leadership qualities still came through and he emerged as the king of the elephants. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like you're, even in the next life, your qualities will take you naturally there. So I'm not sure what they're conscious of, how much they're aware, but certainly even demigods sometimes forget themselves because they become so much engrossed in the spirit of enjoyment that they forget the great sages, just like Nala Kuvera and Manigriva in the presence of Narada Muni. They didn't cover themselves, the ladies did, because they were naturally shy and they weren't as intoxicated. But these two sons of Kuvera, they were so intoxicated that they had no regard for sage Narad, who cursed them. And then when they got cursed, then the seriousness of everything became apparent to them. And they also begged forgiveness, and they were given a blessing to get the darshan of Krishna.
So it wouldn't be unrealistic to assume that in the heavenly planets, everything is more elevated, birds, trees, elephants, and they have the ability to prepare for death, unlike we do here in the lower systems.
Yeah, and the big challenge they have is they're enjoying too much. Because when you hear the descriptions of the heavenly planets, then it doesn't sound like characteristic of the modes of ignorance and passion. It sounds very much like mode of goodness beyond our conception. So much so that we immediately, if someone gives an opportunity, we might think, oh, let me give it a shot. But we've been there before, apparently we've been through all Brahmanda, Brahmati, Konya, Bhagavan, Jiva, Guru, Krishna, Prasadi, Pai, Bhaktilata, Beej. The living entity's been through all the stages of life. We've been here since time immemorial. And we've forgotten that we were through that and that still didn't satisfy us. And it was temporary. So even though it's the less influence of the lower modes, then I'm not sure that it's completely free from the lower modes. There must be some passion involved. An example, when the demigods and the demons fight, then there has to be some passion employed in fighting against the demons. But some of the things which the living entities do in Kali Yuga on the earthly planet, the demigods wouldn't dream of doing.
So we all know that on the heaven planets they don't get sinful reactions. They're just enjoying the results of their good karma. And there was one devotee saying yesterday that was saying that you don't get karma in the heavenly planets. But I just read this in the CC the other day, Adi Leela, and it says, you do not accept the results of your activities, unlike ordinary demons and demigods who suffer or enjoy the reactions of their activities in the material world. Unaffected by the reactions of work, you eternally exist with your full spiritual potency. This we cannot fully understand.
Yeah, it makes sense because they've got is it some Prabhupada?
Yeah, this is Prabhupada saying it in the purport in Adi Leela.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that demigods couldn't commit sinful activities because we see they get cursed in many ways, if they do something. So apart from getting cursed, they do have the freedom to choose. It would be more like those who are on the hellish planets don't commit any sins because they're already suffering so much. They've not even got any opportunity to commit any sins. They're suffering so much that all they're conscious of is extreme suffering. And but I wouldn't say that as like an absolute statement. But certainly they're enjoying the results of being on the sacrifices and charities and penances they did on the human platform. They're enjoying the results of that. But just like someone else, if you get some good reaction, doesn't mean to say that you're not subject to contravening the laws.
Yeah, and also because in the second canto, when the universe is filling up with water, describes that the residents of the higher planets, they start hopping up they start performing austerities, and they go up eventually into Brahmaloka, and then they go back to the spiritual world, because so obviously they can do Sukriti.
Yeah, because Brahmaloka is also known as Tapaloka, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Tapa, basically everybody there is just doing tapasya. They're not really, although there's opportunities, then the lower heavenly planets, it's just like the demigod, the devotees, they understand demigods can give material benefits, but they're not involved in that. They're looking for the highest benefit. Even though in our hearts we still have material desires, we have the knowledge that why spend time on that? That's just going to keep me in the material world.
I was thinking as well. Well, you know,
They don't get reactions in the sense that they're the ones that allocate the reactions normally, the demigods, but they get the reaction directly from Krishna. Indra was directly chastised, Brahma directly chastised. So when you're that far up on the ladder, okay, maybe you're not going to get a reaction from another demigod, but Krishna, you're dealing directly now with Krishna, you know.
Yeah, well, one way they don't get the reactions is because we're talking about great demigods, but all the other denizens of the heavenly planets, they might not be demigods, but they're living amongst the demigods. But yeah, they don't get reactions for things that the human beings get reactions for. So just like the enjoyment they're allowed is not allowed of the human platform. The human life is meant for tapasya, but we forget that. We think we're still trying to enjoy like a demigod, and therefore we're getting so many punishments. You know, they try to enjoy unlimited sex life, unrestricted sex life, and that interferes with their enjoyment if they get pregnant, so they abort the child, things like that. So it then becomes so entangled because they're trying to enjoy on a higher level, but the human form of life is meant for tapasya. It's not meant for enjoying the senses, but the senses do get some enjoyment. And even some demigod worshippers understand this, therefore they can perform some pujas, yogyas, etc. And they will, it's a bit like if you're gambling and you're winning and you're getting some chips, then they don't keep on cashing all their chips in, they'll be careful how they hedge their bets. Not edible chips, although it's a hint for Saddam Town. They're saving up their good karma. So even though they have good karma in this life, there was an example some devotees years ago told us is one very wealthy Indian person in London, but if you went to visit their home, it was so Spartan. They practically hardly had any furniture, almost to the point where they're like swapping the light bulb into different rooms. Not exactly, but they didn't have light shades. They were just very frugal, and they had an understanding that you don't cash in your good karma, then that follows you. Not sure how that works, but basically, if we try to enjoy, we may have some good karma in this life, and if we don't use it for Krishna, then it can be entangling. It could actually be detrimental to us to have good karma. Someone gets a good position, wealth, fame, knowledge, and then they abuse it or misuse it to do something terrible. Then they'd be better off being, a humble peasant, penniless pauper. So it always comes down to what we do with what we've got. And Prabhupada also mentions being envious of someone is impractical. If someone, even amongst devotees, someone may be in a situation which they're envious of, but it's like, oh, Krishna is seen to give them that position, give them that facility. We have to be careful not to be envious of others' material facilities, otherwise it may be the reason why we have to take birth again. And just accept everything is as it's supposed to be, because the law of karma is running the show in the material world. Yeah, anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the lovely class. It was just because Gajendra is giving very nice prayers, like the whole chapter, there's so many nice prayers about the Lord, and it seems he really knew who the Lord was, and then we just find out now that he doesn't have a clue who Krishna is, you know, because Prabhupada says he doesn't know what his name is. So I'm just wondering, how does he make such nice prayers if he doesn't even know who the Supreme Authority is? Generally, we have to know.
Apohanam cha. From Krishna comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. And the Lord's within his heart. Just like Dhruva Maharaj, he was only a small boy, and you think, how could such a small boy, 5 years old, know some prayers? You know, even the most intelligent of kids wouldn't be able to do that, because the Lord benedicted him, right? Touched his head with the conch, and he was able to he was speechless until the Lord gave him that power. And the Lord just demonstrated it by touching his head with the conch, and then he could give all the prayers. But the Lord was in the heart. Sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you're preaching, and because the person's asking relevant questions, you're speaking about things you didn't really know that you understood, because the Lord's within your heart giving you that knowledge to convey the right thing at the right time.
I was thinking also, we know to some degree that Krishna is God, and we're directing our prayers to him. So how amazing that Lord Vishnu appeared even though he didn't know who he was. So how much more are we in a beneficial situation that we can directly focus on the person, and invoke his mercy rather than just, what does it refer to in the Bible? It says he just knew there was something behind it all, right? Some supreme authority behind it all.
And also Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita that I make up for what they lack. So if we're in a situation where we lack the ability to do something, but the desire is there, then the Lord will make up for that. And of course, just not having a desire doesn't mean to say, I've got a desire to be with Krishna. That's not enough. We have to demonstrate something. Prabhupada says that devotion has to be demonstrated. It's not an emotional thing. It's not a sentimental thing. And by that endeavor, we see that Maharaj Indradyumna, as a king, he was a great devotee, and he gave up the whole kingdom, and he was performing austerities. So he was actually acting in order to get closer to Krishna. He was acting according to Dharma. And the Dharma of a king is actually such a great, weighty responsibility. So as they surrender a reward accordingly, he'd surrendered, and his path seemed to be temporarily distracted by enjoying an elephant body. But the Lord didn't forget his devotee, and he redeemed him. He took him. Okay, I think we better stop here. Or something else, is that it? Okay, it's Kongaruvinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Santaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Santaraj Premanandi. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.